Hello, hello, welcome back this week. Another dev stream from me. Last week we talked a lot about game design, game theory, what makes conversational UI good and bad. And we looked back at some of the demos that we've built on stream, some of the demos we built off stream. We played through a little, talked, just gave comments and thoughts about what we liked, what we didn't like. It was very hand wavy and high level, and we didn't get a lot of code written, but it was a fun week to take a break and just talk about how things should be in what we're building. But this week I'm going to focus a lot more on actually just writing code, so we're going to jump right in. I will give a brief little review of what we are building here. If you head on over to chromagolem.itch.io, here you can see some of the demos that we've built so far. And in all of these, and some of the other demos as well that aren't on the site, minus this one here, they've all been very conversational, highlighting some different aspects in how you can power NPCs with generative AI, text generation, new AI stuff in games. So they have all kind of, we've rebuilt that library for generating text, managing histories, displaying it on screen, like talking to that AI through the conversation over and over in each of these demos. And so now that we've kind of gone through all those last week and had comments on what we liked, what we didn't like, we're going to be rebuilding it for hopefully the final time. More in the form of a more modular prefab that we can drop into each demo. Anytime you want to spawn a conversation with an NPC, specifically an AI-powered NPC. So we'll have features for generating like a conversation history, obviously generating responses to whatever the player says, but also some more niche stuff that we've been using, like in Smack to the Future, your goal in the conversation was to convince a police officer that you were innocent of the crimes that you were committing. So there was like a heat bar that you had to manage. You had to use your words to bring that heat bar down to 0. So they thought you were innocent, but you could potentially say the wrong things and it would go up. All that was baked into the AI LLM that we were using, so it actually powered the responses, and those responses fed back in and asked for like a delta on some game state values. So we're going to build all that in as well. Similarly, in You Are Not Alice, you have like friendship scores with all the coworkers that you're talking to. So that's also handled by the LLM there as well. Basically what we found is it's fun to talk to these AI NPCs, but generally you want to have some sort of goal or purpose or thing you're building towards. So we just want to bake that in like front and center in this conversation library that we're building. So if we build a new demo, say this horror game that we're working on, and the goal is to talk through this vent and convince this person in the next room over that you are in the same sort of like prison cell that they are, you can set that up really easily, and you have a visual bar that communicates that to the player of, here's your score, you're trying to get to here. Every message that you send adjusts the score left or right or up or down or whatever. And so it feels more like a mini game almost. Every time you talk to an NPC, you're trying to fulfill this goal. You have fail states, you have win states. Obviously all that can be optional too, so you could just have the chat history and chat responses. We've got some other stuff built in that we kind of mocked out last week. For example, in You Are Not Alice, you have like a sort of inventory system of files that you can drag into a conversation. We imagined an RPG where you have a literal inventory where you can drag items in and have people comment on them or tell you about them or offer to buy them or whatever the conversation drives. So we left some space here. We probably won't build that in this demo unless we find a need to it. It might just stay mocked out, but we're going to start by mocking up or filling in all these mocked out pieces. So none of this works yet. This is the rough, unstyled UI that we built for a conversation. These are all in container blocks, so we can move them around as need be, but in short, we have this message history. We have player input, where we have auto-generated responses that they can click on to send that message, and those are generated based on the conversation history, but can also be generated on the description or personality of who you're talking to. Can also incorporate like your player's profile or however you want to incorporate that data in. If you are playing a pacifist game or something, or you have some job, like all that can feed into the suggested responses for any NPC you talk to. Obviously, you can also write your own message. The biggest thing that we learned in our demos so far, I think, is the combination of both of these input methods has resulted in, by far, the most responses, longest conversations, people having the most fun. There's a lot of times where you're just not inspired to write your own message, and you just want to keep the conversation going. But also, these serve as a great jumping off point for giving you examples of what you could say. So, sure, I'll sell it for 10,000 gold. I don't know if this text is too small for you guys. Please let me know if it is. But if you see as a player, sure, I'll sell it for 10,000 gold, it's very, very easy to just type in, like, sure, I'll sell it for 1,000,000 gold. Like, conceptually, it's not that difficult or not that different, versus if there were no responses, you might not have an amount that you want to sell it for as like an anchor, or you might not even know that you could sell it, or you don't really know what's possible. So I'm not going to get too much into the theory. I'll just say that also gets into the second big point of what we've learned, is that with these sort of AI-driven conversations, the traditional railroads in games where you have a very defined set of things you can do kind of fall apart. Not entirely, because we want to kind of artificially keep those in to keep players railroaded where we want them to go, but there is a lot more that they can do. Unfortunately, what we've seen is players don't know that they can do more. So those that have tried out stuff and was very surprised that it actually worked, they really, really liked demos. But when they have just only done the pre-generated responses, or only wrote their own messages, but they kind of mapped to what would be pre-generated responses, it doesn't really feel as magical, because they can, I mean, it's kind of like talking to an NPC in any other game if it's not really different. But I think having more pre-generated responses that are more varied kind of shows the player the space of thinking of, like, oh, I could be, maybe I can sweet talk this NPC, or maybe I can be really aggressive and convince them to hand something over for free. Like, that's not something you'd normally try in a traditional like RPG, MMO or something, but it could work if you are able to, one, convince the player to get to some sort of goal state in this conversation, and two, if the AI has the proper means to manipulate the game state. So that's things that we bake in here, but it's things like adding items to the player's inventory, removing items from the player's inventory, playing animations, playing sound effects, sending messages to other AI agents in the game. These are all tools that the NPCs can use, and it's up to the AI engine underneath to look at the conversation and say, what tools should I use in response to this message? So that's a lot of words to say. It's a pretty powerful thing we're building. It's very generic. We've built it a few times now, in a very specific sense for the demos that we've been building. So we're trying to take more of our time this time and think through more of the possibilities so we can build it more generic, more modular, and kind of nicer code at least. Yeah, let's get on in. We've got this message history, we've got player input, we've got these goal states here which will populate, and we've got information about who you're talking with, and this inventory system we probably won't work with this week, but is there as well. And you know what, that whole time I realized I wasn't sharing my screen, so let me go on and do that. And I'll just repeat, we have message history, player input, the goal states for the conversation, who you're talking to is information, and this inventory system. We're going to start with this chat history. We will go ahead and do some static, just test messages up front. We'll populate those in. Then we'll hook up the AI to respond to stuff. Then we'll probably hook up player input to add messages, or maybe we'll switch those two. So this whole left side of the screen is what we're going to focus on first. It's kind of the bread and butter of a conversation system. And then we'll bake in more of like the game state for the goal states for the conversation, how much they trust you, how friendly they are, like how likely they are to hire you if this is a job interview or something. That's what we'll use those game states for eventually, and we'll probably leave this character information and inventory stuff more open and mocked out just for it's not really exciting stuff to do. You're just putting text in basically. You might be defining an interface of how this prefab accepts that data, but interacting with the AI in interesting ways is a cool way to is a cool thing to build. So we'll be building that. So we've got this set up now where we have our conversation controller as a high-level parent object. It's importantly empty because we have the HUD as a child object under it, which we can enable and disable from other scripts. So for example, in this game, in this demo, you're going to walk over to this vent in the wall, and when you interact with the vent in the wall, it triggers the dialogue. However, we also want to have a kind of background preparation, something that can fire when the player gets near, or when some other condition is met that starts pre-generating some of these AI things. Just because LLMs are currently very, very slow, they can be used when you have short messages. They're pretty fast for, like, you say something, the NPC responds, you say something else, the NPC responds. That works well if what you're saying and what they're saying is like a sentence or two max. But for longer, like if you want to incorporate paragraphs and paragraphs of game state and like JSON blobs that you want to embed into the prompts and manipulate, that's going to take a bit longer. So we want to have this background object that can be running. We'll probably put like a trigger collider on it, so either when the player gets near it or when they do something else, like pick up a slider over here, then we can start pre-generating all the stuff for this conversation to be ready.
then we can start
and
generating all the stuff for
a good example of that, if you think about like a big MMORPG, all the NPCs in the town might have conversations that they need to prepare, but you don't necessarily want to prepare them all at once as soon as you load into the world or load into the town or arrive at the town. You want to know about how long they will take to prepare. Like this guy will take 6-7 seconds before he has a grasp of the player's history and inventory and the things that they've done, the quests that they've done, and then uses his personality and whatever to build his conversation baseline or something that he's building off of. You can go ahead and define a radius around him, probably a radius that is the distance that it, like if it takes the player 6 seconds to get to him and he needs 5 seconds to prepare this conversation, it's probably about the size of radius you need. But that lets the player go through town and only generate the AI content that might be used. It'll be ready if they do want it, but it'll cut down a lot on both processing power if all this generation's done on the device or on the computer, or cost if it's done in the cloud for faster responses. Yeah, so that's kind of our setup. Everything is very what's the term? Separated right now for moving around, restyling later. We're focused on just functionality right now. And and this, no, that's, we'll come back to that. I just added a parent, so I don't want to mess up the scaling, but I think I already did. Anyway, let's get to writing code, because I keep saying I would love to write code and I keep getting distracted. So let's see here. We want to start out by creating a message history with some default messages, and then we will build a void refresh message or redraw messages from history. So message histories. One thing I will say is this start conversation is just called from the vent. When you interact with the vent, interactable vent. Just so you know where we're coming from. When you interact with the event, it's going to toggle that HUD on, and it's going to trigger start conversation on it. So all this can be prepared in the editor state. It doesn't need to be done at playtime or any other time. Let's say message history actually includes new only respond in Spanish, and we will say we'll give it a assistant message first. What do you ¿Qué pasa? That means what's up, I believe. So we've got a message history. So that's what we want to draw into this history container. So I believe, yeah, we created a message prefab already that is literally just an avatar and a message. And we can, since we're using a horizontal layout group here, we can reverse the order of these two to put the avatar on the left or the right. and it'll
these two.
respace it
So you put the
properly.
avatar on the left or the right, and
But
it'll
all we're going to
respace
do
it properly.
is, let's see here.
But all we're going to do
Conversation HUD. Let's get our message prefab set.
Conversation HUD. Let's get our message
We want to
prefab
clear all existing messages from the container. Just iterates over the transform. Destroys them, and then we'll instantiate a new message for each message in the message history.
A new message for each.
So we don't have like a script on the message yet, although we probably will, because one thing that we will want to add is hovering over messages. You want to see the effects that they had on these. But for now, well, we'll go ahead and do it now. So we will say,
we'll go ahead and do it now.
Chroma message controller, and I'm prefixing all of these with Chroma for now, just because we'll probably release this on the asset store for other people to use, and I don't want to clobber their namespaces. Let's see. So we have 2 OpenAI services in this script, or in this project. Service. We do. Oh, we don't need that one.
We do. Oh, we don't need that one.
I don't know, we probably couldn't add it because it couldn't compile with our placeholder code. Okay, so this guy now gets a Chroma message controller script. Let's go ahead and give him a public, private, we'll just say public for now. Text Mesh Pro UGI, message text, and public void set text. Cool, so this is more a placeholder script that we'll add hover effects and stuff to later. This is probably where we'll want to do reordering of avatar and message and stuff later as well. But it lets us kind of be ready to use it here. So we can say message object dot get component, Chroma message controller dot set text. So that should show our messages in the chat history. For now, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that this is enabled by default. We have it right now where, I guess for this first time, I'll load in and show. We have it already set up for the preconditions to be met. You need to go over and get this lighter in this demo. You gotta walk over here. You push this trolley out of the way, and then you inspect the air vent to start the conversation. I'm going to skip all that for this stream. We'll just start with the HUD loaded up already. But I noticed that we did not neither delete these messages nor show new ones, so something ain't right. Let's just go ahead and start tracing from the beginning. Start conversation should have been called. I mean, it probably was because set active true we know was called. Start conversation was called, but we didn't call redraw. Cool. So to skip all that, what I'll do is just call start conversation in the start method, and we'll just make sure that this is open or enabled. So now when we load into the game,
make sure that this is open.
we should immediately see the
So
chat
now
HUD,
when we load into
and
the
it has one message in it,
we should
which
immediately see
is incorrect.
the chat HUD, and it has one message in it, which is incorrect.
But object reference is set to an instance.
But
Yes, let
object
me
reference
double
is
check
set
that
to an
our
instance.
message has
Yes,
message text set.
let me
It
double
does
check
not.
that our message has
Cool.
message text set.
So that should fix that. We now have two messages.
Cool.
They're spaced weirdly. We'll
So
fix
that
all
should
the
fix
styling
that.
and stuff later. We
We
just
now
want to get
have
stuff
two
working.
messages. They're spaced weirdly. We'll fix all the styling and stuff later. We just want to get stuff working.
One thing we probably want to do is here, let's start a big old block for configuration. And let's say show system messages.
And let's say
since that's something you probably don't want to show in the chat history, but maybe you do want to show, so in the interest of making this all modular and customizable, we will make that configurable. So here, we'll say if message.role is system and you don't show the system messages, you continue. That makes sense. They will be included in the actual chat history being sent to the AI, because that is built from the message history data itself. This is literally just for showing it to the UI.
Because that is built from the message history data itself. This is literally just for showing it to the UI.
And let's go ahead and on the message controller, let's build our method for reversing the ordering as well. So let's say click void set
method for reversing the ordering.
What do we want to call this? Like set primary speaker, set.
What do we want to call this? Like set primary speaker. Set
avatar message order. We can just have two that say
avatar message order.
Style from speaker. That'll do it. We'll have stream speaker ID if speaker ID is equal to user, that's the player, then we will do nothing because we want avatar and then message. For the assistant, we want the message, then avatar. So we will say transform.find avatar dot there's a method for sending it to the end of its sibling, I believe. Transform.set as last sibling. Yeah. Okay. So now, if we let's So here we should see one message, and the avatar should be on the right instead of the left. Let's double check that that works. That's testing both excluding system messages and putting the avatar on the right. Let's go ahead and double check. Don't really want to do a stream in Spanish, so let's say what's up, and let's add one for the user. Should put our avatar on the left. the most exciting conversation you've ever seen. Let's double check that we get 2 messages, avatar on opposite sides. Cool, that looks great. So everything works there. Cool, so let's set up our suggested messages. These buttons down here. I don't know if we want to style them as buttons, actually. But they kind of act like buttons. When you click on one, it will just put it into the conversation. We could have it to where like you could right click on it or something and it'll put in the input box so you can edit it. But I think most of the time when people are clicking on them, they don't really want to write their own message. So making it as simple to just keep the conversation carrying forward is probably the way to go. Let's think about that. Yeah, I think that's fine. I think we'll just for now have it so if you left click on one of these suggested responses, it will add it as a message to the message history and refresh the message history. So let's go ahead and create a suggested response prefab. And let's give it a suggested response controller with our nice handy dandy prefix. I don't know that we need this controller quite yet, but once again, later on we probably want to have some like hover effects or right click effects. We can use this to populate our on click method as well. I think that's what we'll do for now. So when we start, what we want to do is grab our button component and add an on click of our current text value. We take that as a parameter and pass it to the message controller, not the message controller. I'm missing one file. Conversation controller. We will have a public void add message. We have a string role for the speaker and the message content. Let's say and if you excuse the echo real quick, just want to pop my stream on and make sure sounds good. Cool. Alright, that sounds good. So now we have a public add message conversation. We can set a role and a content. It will add a new message. We might also want to trigger a response from the AI. We'll see. Probably depends on whether the speaker role is the AI itself responding or the player responding. But for now, this will do. So in our suggested response controller, we will have the thing we're missing is a reference back up to the conversation HUD. Let's rename this to container. The conversation HUD. So this is what we want to do. We want to say we want a public string suggested response, and Set up suggested response. And then we'll set that, we store it, since we have a text property. I'm thinking through both. We have these defaulted for now that we can set the references manually on, but we are probably going to be creating these from the script of the conversation controller. So we want to make sure that there's a method for setting it up, setting all the references, etc. So instead of doing all that in start or in the editor, I'm just going to call setup suggested response from the start, as if that's all being done, but it's basically hard-coded for now. So in here, our text label, it's set here, our suggested response will just hard-code to hello, and we also want to find the buttons click handler, exactly that. Let's take out the to-do and it'll probably button on click. Yeah, I guess we need an on-click method, which we will generate. So this will be good for testing real quick, because what we're actually going to do is call the conversation controller. This method, it's not a singleton though, we need the actual reference. So let's just put that debug in right now, make sure all of this is set up as we expect. Let's actually say suggested response here, and that will turn this into a no-op for now, but it lets us differentiate these two. So this guy can have Gaslow, and let's apply these, bring in another one, and this guy can have no wow. And I guess we don't have any styling set up to move those around quite yet, but we'll do all the styling later. We're just trying to get stuff working. So these should have yes, no, and if you click on one, it should debug, which it does not. Wow. So this guy does not have an on-click effect. Did not set. Is this the wrong button? Let's just include UI. Let's add our own debug sanity. Just make sure that this code is actually executing at all. And this suggested response, there should be a button on the same object, so that should be fine. Let's clear this, let's fire it up, and let's see. So they should have on-click effects, however they do not. So, why? I guess we can check to see if get component button does actually find something. I feel like we'd get an error if we tried to call on click on null. And the interactable flag shouldn't really matter because we're checking the actual on-click directly. Let's do this. Oh, right. Do UIs use event triggers now? This is from 2014. Let's do something a little newer. On-click add listener. Do I just do an anonymous method? Will this work? No? Okay. Kind of glad that didn't work. Let's see here. So, the other thing I want to make sure we do is input mouse lock unlock mouse cursor. That's it. We lock it for the demo itself, but since we're just going straight to the UI, we want to make sure that that gets unlocked. So while I'm thinking about it, let's add that to our interactable event as well as one of our steps to do when we show this UI. Actually, that probably should just live in the conversation controller at the start. And we probably also want to do like time scale to 0, stuff like that, but might be a little too overreaching for now. Let's see here. So we have these buttons. Let's say button equal to get component button. If button is equal to null, button is null. We want to double check that. This is a getter and a setter. Click its value. Don't know. And we listener count, get persistent event count. I feel like that, I'm not sure what that is, but maybe it'll work. We'll see 0 to 1. If this doesn't work, we're gonna look at event triggers. Vaguely remember getting them mixed up in the past. So 0 listeners, 0 listeners. Let's just say maybe on click for event listener. I mean, it's possible also that it's just not showing up in the editor properly.
I mean, it's possible.
Wouldn't put it past Unity, but I don't want to assume that. It's more likely I'm doing something wrong.
But I don't want to assume that. It's more likely I'm doing something wrong.
So either one of these should work.
So let's
go back to not using the anonymous function.
So let's go back to
adding this listener. In our debug, did we get button is null?
Listener. In our debug,
we did not. Okay, that's good.
We did not. Okay, that's good.
So we can clean up a bit of this. Button on click add listener. This all happens in start, so it is possible that something else is start, like the button itself is start. Button itself start is overriding it.
Start is overriding it.
So we could like delay it a frame. I don't really want to do that though. It's research montage time. I always double check that I'm not the one that asked the question. So, I think everything that we did was perfectly correct, and it is Unity's fault. But, how do we prove that? Are these buttons interactable? They are. They just might have an on-click. Let's go ahead and give them a static on-click just to prove that we can interact with them. Excuse me. In case you missed the highlighted message, when you add a listener to a button while the game is running, the listener is not displayed in the inspector, which about 30 seconds before I just said, I assume that's not the case, but could be the case. We are going to add this static listener to both of these, so we should get a debug statement when we click on either one now.
static listener.
which we don't.
Do both of these. So we should get a debug.
Is it because my cursor's getting eaten up for some reason? Why is it getting eaten?
Which we don't. Is it because my cursor's getting
let's see
eaten
here.
up for some reason?
Let's take a quick look at our player input. Make sure we're not. I don't even know how we would lock that cursor again. Cursor.lock state. So we lock it. On application focus.
So we lock it.
Well, we don't want to do that right now.
On application focus. Well, we don't want to do that right now.
Still locking. Let's see here. So we lock it at the beginning on our camera controller. Which we can
so we lock it at the beginning on our
clear out for now. Let's do this as well. They could be overriding each other since they're both in a start method. So now all we have left is
clear out for now.
Unlocked cursors. This is not referenced anymore. Let's make sure we save that. Let's load it. We shouldn't start locked, which we don't when we click in here. Cool. It was weird UI stuff, but we also can see that our buttons have worked all along, just couldn't click on them. So you can click on yes, lol, no, wow. Cool. Let's go ahead and it'd be nice to not leave these commented outlines randomly throughout the code. So I don't think we actually do want to do this on application focus. We can manage the lock state ourselves. This guy, we'll leave him commented out as well. This will actually use the big boy words. And we'll leave it for now. That's fine. So when we re-enable the locked cursor on our camera controller, we will manage it ourselves. Lock the cursor. When we start the conversation, we'll unlock the cursor. When we leave the conversation, we'll lock it again. We don't necessarily need that catch-all state of every time you click back in the application, you lock it again. Although, really haven't tested a lot of alt-tabbing out of demos, so we'll see. But for the time being, things work as expected. The next, well, what we have now is we are drawing the messages in the container properly. We have these suggested responses. When you click on one, they're debugging out the message that they would send. We need to get a reference back to the conversation HUD, which we could do by just crawling up the DOM, or starting from the root node and looking for one. I don't think we're gonna be able to like set this as part of like a parent that it can always reference. So maybe we just go up the hierarchy looking for an object with a chroma conversation controller. Although let's not do that. Let's go ahead and use the chroma conversation controller for.
Let's go ahead and use the conversation controller for.
We want to show these suggested responses. Because we'll be generating them from the conversation anyway, we might as well write that code to generate them and show them, and then we can pass self in as a reference, so they will have that and not have to crawl up that hierarchy. Let's do that in a coroutine, I think. Let's say start coroutine, generate and show suggested responses. Don't need to generate start coroutine. We want to generate this. That's it. Cool. So this will take the conversation history, use a prompt, and spit out probably a JSON blob of suggested responses. We'll write that as a comment, but for now we're just gonna probably mock it out and respond with a array of strings. Could also use the chat message object, or we could have a separate object that also includes game state metadata, like the effects that it would have on using that suggestion. If we wanted, for example, the player to be able to hover over this and see like a % chance that it works, or like effects on these if he were to click on this, or something like that. I think for now we can just generate the text. We can always kind of wrap that and build around it later. But I think this has to be an enumerator, I think. And let's build that. So in order to do that, we will pass the chat history into a response generator prompt, which we'll build. Let's go ahead and put a placeholder for that. We got our prompts folder. We got new prompts for generate suggested responses to chat history. Long name says what it does. Which returns an array of string responses that needs parsed. So we mock that out with string suggested responses is equal to new string affirmative negative on secretary. So you can pretend that we used our AI for generating those responses. We got them. Clear all existing responses. Cool, that makes sense. In not the transform. We want a public game object. Suggested responses container. And then we want to also have a prefab for are those bad boys? Then instantiate, well, yeah, for each response we want to instantiate that suggested response and throw it in.
suggest a response.
Is that really what I named that?
Throw
It is. Wow.
Is that really what I named that? It is. Wow.
Cool. So let's double check this. For each response that we're generating,
So let's double check
these,
this.
we instantiate a suggested response object in that suggested responses container.
In that suggested responses container,
we grab the response controller and set it up with text. Is that correct? Let's receive suggested response. Yeah, I guess that's fine. We also want to have public chroma. The whole reason we're doing this, conversation controller. So here we can say not quite there on the response controller. Now we have our reference back. So that lets us write this on suggested response clicked, uses that reference to add that message as a message to the conversation. We no longer need to call this because we are doing that from the conversation controller. We're not locking our cursor anymore, so we also don't need to unlock it, I believe. Let me double check that. But let's finish up this method. We need to return something. Can't remember when or why we'd yield, except at the very end, maybe. Return, no. Sure, when it's done. Okay. So when we click on a suggested response, it will add that message to the conversation, which adds it to the history, and it will redraw that history, and then it'll show more suggested responses. So we want to only do that if the speaker role is assistant. We don't want to get into an infinite loop of the player says something, it generates suggested responses to the player says something again, and so on. And likewise, if we add a system message, if we aren't showing it, we probably shouldn't be generating new suggested responses either. If we are showing it though, maybe we do, let's say, else if speaker role equal system and we're showing system messages, then we can do the same. Because if you're showing the system message in the chat, it probably makes sense that when you get a new chat bubble, you get new responses. Cool. So this should work. If we go in and test it now, what we should see is our initial messages. We're probably going to have overlapping buttons here. Need to make sure all our references are set up properly. This guy. What are we missing here? Prefab message. Prefab message.
Prefab message.
Oh, on the conversation controller.
Oh, on the conversation.
Oh, because I renamed it.
Oh, because I renamed it.
Alright, so we got a message there. Got a suggested response there.
Got a suggested response there.
Suggested responses container.
Suggested responses container.
That. Let's go ahead and rename that to suggested responses container. Let's go ahead and add a horizontal layout group to that, just so when we add multiple things to it, it doesn't overlap. They're not going to be styled well right now. We want it to overflow, but it's fine for now. Don't think we can force the overflow here. We'll do something for styling it differently later. Let's give it a shot. These should all clear out, which they don't. That seems incorrect. Okay. Let's see here. Why are they not clearing out? Our conversation controller. Start the conversation. We never call this. Let's say public bool start conversation with suggested responses. So now the dev can choose if the conversation probably always should happen where you open up conversation, there's a history of at least one message or zero even, but the onus is on the player to respond, so it probably makes sense to have suggested responses they can respond with. But let's go ahead and say if we want to start the conversation with suggested responses, go ahead and generate and show those suggested responses. So that should clear out our buttons here. Which it does. We do have 3 now, which is unfortunate because of the layout. The routine is null. I probably need to like yield instead of return or something. Yield return. Let's try this. Does this work? Fine. Yield return null. What is all this? Why are you making these changes? Let's cancel that and let's just yield return null. Cool. They're cleared out. Click on this, it should say affirmative, negative, non sequitur. Let's go ahead and while we're here, let's control and control. We'll apply those as well outside of play mode because it'll reset when we stop playing. But they are actually adding to the chat log. Awesome. So obviously we need to do scrolling. That's a thing. But making good progress. Let's go ahead and apply those changes. Let's clear out these defaults. And let's handle scrolling the
handle
message
scrolling
container to the bottom
the
anytime there's a new message.
container to the bottom anytime there's a new message.
So that is a vertical layout group. Which I'm less familiar with, but how do we scroll this? Have a viewport with a mask. Scroll rect on the parent. Don't want to scroll horizontally. That's what we want. I think we want this to be 0. Is that what they did up there? Scroll to the bottom. Yeah, 0. And I think, yeah, 0.
We want this to be 0. Is that what they did up there? Scroll to the bottom. Yeah, 0. And I think that's 0.
Sure. Let's steal that. What did they... 1 second.
Sure. Let's steal that. What did they... 1 second.
So we could force canvas updates. I don't think we need to do that. We'll see. We'll keep it in our pocket. Steal this scroll to top code.
We need to do that.
And let's put it on our
keep it in our pocket.
conversation controller. And let's do the same for scroll chat to bottom. Let's call it message history. And kind of be nice if we could scroll to a particular index of message, but we'll leave that as a challenge for another day. Let's see. So bottom will be at 0 for vertical. The game object doesn't get set inactive. This guy, scroll rect. I guess we should grab public scroll rect message messages container scroll rect
messages
So let's grab that reference as well. Which is this guy? No, it is message history. And now when we add a new message, we will start a coroutine of this, which should wait till the end of the frame and then scroll all the way to the bottom. It waits to the end of the frame because obviously we have to add this message. So add the message, has a new bottom. Now we scroll.
It waits to the end of the frame because obviously we have to
Okay, so
add
to the
message
bottom.
as a new bottom. Now we scroll.
Let's see if that works.
Let's see if that works.
Does not. But I'm also not convinced that the scroll box works at all, because if we manually scroll down,
but I'm also not convinced that
elastically bounces us back up. So this probably is scrolled to the bottom. Question is, how do scroll boxes work? Let's see. Content, vertical layout group. If we make that smaller, can we scroll a little bit? No. So the viewport, if we make that smaller, that's when we get a scroll bar. Content. What if we take all of these, put them in the viewport instead? Some weird stuff on the page. What is this? Oh, it's the lights on the ceiling.
Oh, it's the lights on the ceiling.
Okay, so putting it in the viewport. And then we would give that a vertical layout group. That doesn't scroll either, they're just gonna keep taking up more. Okay, what did we do? Works now. And it is scrolling to the bottom properly. But what did we do? If we disable all these guys that are on the viewport, still scrolls. If we disable all these guys that are on the content where things should be, then add some. Oh, I guess they're re-added. Was I just scrolling in the wrong direction? Because all we changed was adding a vertical layout group to the viewport. I think I was just scrolling in the wrong direction. Maybe. Let's try it. So we add a bunch. It's not scrolling. And we can't scroll. Why though? Why? We didn't change anything. Did this guy's size update or something? Scroll rect, vertical, viewport is viewport, which is this guy. And the content is the same size. Why is this not expanding? So if we make that big, then we can scroll. Set what we have. But basically the problem is the content is not, this content object is staying the height of its, oh, we probably need a, what's it called? Expander content formatter, content size fitter, vertical fit, min size. That looks right. And now we're scrolling to the bottom. Cool. Content size fitter on our content. With a min size, vertical fit. And that should also help with when we only have one or two messages, they're placed at the top. Cool. Alright. So now everything should work. Throw in a bunch of messages, scrolls properly. We can scroll. It's a nice elastic bounce.
Nice
I'll
elastic
pretend we did that.
bounce.
We didn't.
I'll pretend we did that. We didn't.
And cool. So let's hook up this guy
And
next.
cool. So
When
let's
we
hook
click
up this guy
send,
next.
we will send a custom
When
message
we
as
click
well.
send, we will send a custom message as well.
Cool.
Cool.
So that guy is static, so it becomes very easy when we... Where do we want that logic to live? Could have another script on custom input. Is there any reason to do that? I mean, as opposed to putting this function on like the conversation controller. Oh, what is this? Hello, guys.
Hello, guys.
I see you like dinosaurs. Oh no, you hear me twice?
Oh no, you hear me twice?
Give me 1 second. Let me see if I can figure out why. I wonder if my webcam was picking me up twice. I hope that's better. If you still hear me twice, let me know. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me. Awesome, it's fixed. I am just a little streamer. I stream every Tuesday. I'm working right now on building some libraries for kind of the same thing that I've been building over and over again. I will bring this up real fast. I build small demos every week, kind of highlighting different ways to use AI in game dev. Brief little overview of all these things. Smack to the Future was a game jam that I and a friend, my co-founder at our studio, originally built, where it's a little retro brawler where you beat people up on the street and eventually a cop shows up and you need to convince him that you are actually innocent. So people really loved lying to the cops for some reason, making up crazy stories of why they were there. So that was kind of the original idea. You have this kind of bar over on the side. So each conversation that you have with an NPC kind of has a goal or a win state and a loss state of you go to jail if they don't trust you enough, or they set you free if they like you. We kind of scaled that up in our next demo, You Are Not Alice, where you play as a hacker, and you've taken over somebody's computer. Yeah, definitely inspired by Streets of Rage. A lot of those old Nintendo brawlers. In You're Not Alice, we amped that up. You play as a hacker. You took over somebody's computer, an intern's computer at a big corporation, and you have access to her file system and her coworkers' chats. And your goal there is basically to talk to her coworkers and convince them, like, hey, I got this file. I need you to run real fast. Can you give me some feedback on it? And if you can successfully convince any other coworker to run that file, then you gain access to their computer as well. So you gain access to their file system and all their contacts, and you can switch whose computer you're on. It uses the same sort of AI conversation stuff in it. Incorporates a lot of the game state into the actual LLM prompts. But the fun little perk on this one as well is all the files are generated with AI as well. Your file system's all generated, and it takes into account your personality or the employee's personality and role at the company. And so now we're working on a little horror game, just a much smaller scale demo, so I can focus more on polishing stuff. But last week we talked a lot about like game theory and looking at conversations in games over time and our demos so far, and just trying to decide like what is good, what's bad, and there's some like changes in using AI to talk to NPCs. Like a lot of these kind of goal states for conversations that turn them into more of a mini game within the game almost. So really this week we're just kind of building out a super ugly prototype of a modular conversation mini game where you can define some profile information about who you're talking to, some states, like how friendly they are, or if it were like a mock job interview, how likely they are to hire you, that sort of kind of meta stuff. And then obviously the chat interface of you send messages, they send messages. We're generating auto or like suggested messages for the times when you don't necessarily want to type your own message the whole time. Based on the conversation history, we can generate some messages. If you want to take it completely off the rails and say, like, I'm a frog hat crafter and I make $1 million a year and I'm looking to hire you as my assistant, the suggested messages will be about that. So it kind of lets you kind of take the chat however you want to go, but the whole end goal of the conversation is adjusting. Each message has effects on whatever the goals of the conversation are. It's very abstract, I'm sorry, but it's intended to be very modular and reusable. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks again for the raid, guys. I will go ahead and use this time delightfully to plug our Discord if you're interested in AI and game dev. Our studio, we actually started it just for kind of exploring how all this new tech and AI can be used to unlock new mechanics or features in games that weren't possible before it. Like, obviously you could technically like code in a giant decision tree for every NPC in your game so they can handle everything, but it wasn't really realistic. So that's like the most simple example of how you could use generative AI, like text generation in games. But we're trying to take it a few steps further. We're looking for like emergent mechanics. We're very big on strategy games, so some of the demos we have planned are kind of setting up this simulated world based on a bunch of AIs. Do you like using massive decision trees at work? I kind of do, but I think it's also fun to have a few weird branches that you can go down. Yeah, so we're doing a lot of like exploratory work. We're working on a lot of really small demos for just like really small features. The purpose of this horror demo is basically you are locked in a room. Let me show you around the room. Very small room, and you wake up. You're not sure how you got there. There's some very few things to look around in the room. Eventually you'll find a lighter, you'll pick it up. This is all to be changed. There's a camera over here that can watch you. There's a vent over here as well, down here. And basically you will eventually find the lighter and the vent, and the person on the other side of the vent will see the light from your lighter and start a conversation with you like, hey, are you the guy that put me in this room? So your first goal in the game is to convince them like, no, I'm locked in the room too, I don't know why I'm here. And in order to do that, it'll have you tell them some stories like about yourself, like what you were doing before you got in the room. Basically just a few prompts to feed into another AI system that can pull in some more logic that can adjust the game state. So if they are like, what were you doing before you got locked up? And you say, I'm a farmer from Iowa, I was working in the field. I just woke up right here. It was really dark, I don't know. We can kind of feed that into a separate AI system that kind of analyzes that and says, oh, okay, they were working at night, so they're probably not afraid of the dark. So maybe we don't really need to be flickering these lights as much. Or if you think of, I don't know, if they say they were like in elementary school and they were on their way home and they got abducted, or whatever personality the player wants to have, we can both infer some stuff, like maybe spawn some bugs or whatever we think their fears might be. But we can also feed that back into the conversation engine and get this person on the other side of the vent to ask questions and clarify, like, oh man, I wouldn't be able to work in a field. I'm so afraid of bugs. How do you do it? And then the player is more prompted with, I mean, I get by, like, I am afraid of bugs, but, or they're like, oh, I don't really mind the bugs. So you can kind of guide a couple of these AI models together in both driving a conversation, pushing a player where you want them to go, and like asking them questions that you want the answers to in order to use those answers to affect the game world. Kind of lost my train of thought there. But basically, we will take everything that you told them, and for the second goal in the demo, you haven't decided if you're talking directly to the camera where they might be able to hear you, or if we'll put like a phone over here. But you'll be talking to the big bad who put you in this room, and he'll have made up a story about why he put you in this room. So if you said, like, I am a farmer, I was working in the field, maybe he calls you and it's like, hey, I really, like, my family's been starving, they haven't been able to get food, and I tried to steal some food from a farmer, so now I hate all farmers, and so you're the worst. And so your goal then is to, like, you're following down this rabbit hole of crafting this narrative without even realizing it. You need to convince this big bad person, like, hey, farmers aren't all bad, like, I struggle with food too sometimes, it's hard, please let me out, or if you let me out, like, I'll give you food. However you want to tackle the problem of he hates you as a person, how do you convince him to let you out? So it's still very, that's kind of like the bare bones of what all we're trying to tackle in this, but we might change a lot of it. But that's kind of the main issue, is trying to use these AI systems more integrated with each other. Excuse me. And yeah, instead of just having a raw conversation with an NPC that has no effect, we're both piping some of that information into other AI systems to analyze it and feed back into the world, and also using those conversations as kind of like mini games towards a goal. So if you can use your words to accomplish the task, then you succeed and can progress through the game. So those are the two big things we're using with this demo. And right now I'm just building some code. We've built this kind of message HUD in a couple times now, so it's been very specific to each demo, each game, and I'm just trying to make it a little bit more reusable, building a little library for it. Let me see this chat. One really interesting thing is modern AI models out of the box are pretty good at self-critique and decision-making, so you can ask an AI to decide what an NPC should do, then ask another prompt to create an instruction set, and finally another prompt to ask if the instruction set makes sense and will work. Yeah, shout out to Tony in the chat. That's my co-founder as well. He has a big background in React, is the pattern that we've been exploring a lot in. It is kind of this observer pattern where these agents observe something in the world and then kind of use that to reflect on what they should do next and come up with a plan. So it's kind of crazy the places we're going. I'm really excited for it. He and I are both really big strategy gamers, so I can't wait to um, build out some of these fun games that I'm envisioning. And I'm obviously excited because I got distracted. I was in the middle of plugging our Discord. It is in the Discord, or it's in the description of this stream. We focus on AI in games, so if that is something that's interesting to you, we've got some AI tools in there for you to get some help in. We've got some other people that are working on their own stuff. It's just a little community we're building up, and we'd love to have you guys. Feel free to join it. And I also stream every Tuesday, dev streams, and we're starting to do some game streams too, because we play games, so why not? It's crazy how advanced AI is getting, and now you don't even need to be plugged into an online service. Fireship did a video on Mistral's 8x7 that shows how you can run an LLM on your local system. Yeah, we're actually working on, we have an AI internally for our demos that I originally built because we were relying on OpenAI and they kept going down, so I needed to have some sort of man-in-the-middle system for if this API goes down, fall back on this API. But it's also been really nice to kind of have that gateway control where now we can, I mean, Unity Synthesis is supposed to let you do models on device. There's a few other startups working on models on device. They're still pretty slow and they're getting better, but I would say the main problem is the inconsistency in speed. I'll give an example of that in a second, but it is kind of nice to have that fallback mechanic, even for that, of like, if you rely on online models and something goes wrong, or the user doesn't want to use an online model, you can fall back on that on-device model, and it's maybe a little bit slower or like a smaller model, so maybe the quality is not quite as high. But the reverse is also true of if you rely on an on-device model and it's taking too long or it's not giving you the result that you need, that you probably could have a few prompts at least call out to an online service in order to keep things going smoothly. And that example that I said that I'd give in a sec, I didn't want to derail myself, but a great example of that is if you think of like an RPG where you come into a new town and you have a whole slew of NPCs. Obviously, you don't want to be pre-generating like all the stuff necessary for their conversations to happen in real time as soon as you get into town. But one naive solution is to have like a radius around them that if you get within 10 meters of this NPC, it starts generating a couple very basic dialogue trees that you can go down and have them sort of pre-built so you can talk in real time. Especially important with like local models where like on some computers it's probably really fast, but on a lot of computers, more lower end consumer computers, you might get the same response, but it might be like instead of 2 seconds to generate a sentence or two response, it's 10 or 15 seconds. So some of the stuff that we haven't really worked on yet, library-wise, but we've been thinking about is kind of measuring that performance and kind of queuing up these AI systems to start ahead of time. Obviously, it's a delicate balance between like whether you're using online or local. Like one is, I mean, obviously online has its own costs, but local has its own costs as well of like spinning up people's hardware and battery drain and electricity costs even sometimes. There's a lot of it's a delicate balance between making sure things are ready enough to happen in real time with these AI systems that may be fast, may be slow, and also minimizing how much you're using them. because obviously costs. You want to keep as low as you can. Yeah, the failover rates, or failover options and failure rates have been really fun to work on. I've seen and learned a lot of the differences between like GPT 3.5 and GPT 4. For example, uh, on our You Are Not Alice demo, the way that you progress through the game is to convince people to run an executable file that you send them in the game. Obviously, it's not a real file. It doesn't have like file contents. It doesn't even have a file name. You just need to we bake these actions into the LLM saying like, have they sent a file? Are you able to run it? And it's JSON blobs. But we have found that GPT 3.5 has a lot of safeguards in place that anytime you mention like executing a file at all, it's like, I can't do that because of security reasons. But if you just switch over to GPT 4, it does it no problem, or at least it triggers the flag saying like, I can execute the file. So that was actually a difficult failover state for us to solve because we rely on GPT-4 for this demo, but if it goes down, we were relying on GPT 3.5 as a failover, but it doesn't really have the capabilities to do what we want in the game, and we didn't really know that because it wasn't failing often enough for people to complain. So we've kind of have this system that we're building for specifying like the preferred model and provider, and then you have like almost like a ranked choice list of other models that will just go down the list until something works. Yeah, just at a high level, since we're doing all these demos right now, we're trying to focus on reusable libraries and like infrastructure that we can reuse for something bigger. We're planning on a bigger game later on in the game. Yeah, I just added the Chroma Golem banner at the bottom. I'll show you how to set it up. Between Bard, OpenAI, and a failover service you put on a server like Linode, you could keep things extremely stable. Yeah, the cost is also a factor indeed, because obviously if you fail over from like 3.5 to 4 even, it's a big cost jump for somebody who, I mean, you obviously don't want your players to have to be paying more than they need to, if at all. Depends on the game whether that makes sense. But yeah, we're hoping to have at least like, I mean, even with our API, I've got like a priority queue where things that need to happen in real time can happen in real time. But we also have a like low priority queue where if there's NPCs preparing their conversation or something like that where it's not necessarily happening yet but might happen in real time later, you can stick that in a low priority queue, which you can make sure it's using like the cheapest models, the slowest models effectively, and you get kind of the same quality most of the time, but you don't necessarily have to pay for that speed. So there's lots of stuff that we are doing and exploring, and I hope it turns into a fun game or several games. That's I hope it seems fun so far at least. Yeah, prefetch. And yeah, basically just like if you think of things as a branching dialogue tree, like we might prefetch the first maybe 2 steps in on a couple options and maybe generate some suggested responses, which we're doing here. And for example, if you were to start this conversation out, what's up, nothing new. Obviously, we don't have the real prefetch or the real generated suggested responses here, but these we just mocked them out, so we're not eating up token credits while we develop. But for each of these, you can also prefetch what will the NPC respond with if the player responds with any of these. You can't really prefetch if they go off the rails and write whatever they want, but you can also kind of map like whatever they say to one of these if you want the like maximum cost cuttings. Yeah. So basically, I mean, I feel like I have talked up a bunch of features that still kind of work. We're still working on, but that's the long-term goal. We want to build these features and libraries so we can put them all together into a bigger game. And we are focusing more on small demos right now just to highlight each feature and figure out how it works, how it feels. And yeah, we've had good feedback so far. Actually, the game jam that we competed in for Smack to the Future, our first game, we got fourth in out of I think 46. So that was really a good little boost from the beginning. And if you guys haven't played any of these demos, you can play them all for free. Just head on over to chromagolem.itch.io. Word Wars we were working on a couple weeks ago. It doesn't have any AI in it yet. It's just a competitive typing game. We're gonna come back to it in a couple weeks and add some multiplayer. That's really the goal of that demo, is testing out our multiplayer libraries. But You Are Not Alice is really fun. Smack to the Future is pretty fun. And this is very retro vibe. This is kind of hackery vibe. Go wild. We also have a website if you want to learn more. At the bottom of that, very importantly, is all our stuff. We've got some libraries we're about to open source on GitHub. We've got a Discord server for game developers. And obviously we're on all the socials and stuff. And you can find our demos there as well. But all that said, I don't want to plug things forever. I'd love to get back to coding. Happy to keep chatting and answering questions or whatever, but I'm going to try and put my brain back to where it was before I got raided with a bunch of people. So again, thank you all for joining me. Happy to have you here. We were setting up our text input to add messages to the conversation. And we were trying to decide if that logic that gets fired on the send button's on-click event should live on the parent conversation controller, which does a lot of stuff already, or if it should get its own script on like a custom input script. And I don't really see any reason other than separating the code a bunch to put it down here. So I think for now we will go ahead and put it on the conversation controller. We can always strip that out later, but it'll work for now. So let's say public void send custom input as message, and we will set that as our on-click event for the send button. Which goes here, conversation HUD, conversation controller, send custom input, and that will grab the message contents, which I guess we should set a reference for as well. And we'll go ahead and clear that field out once we've sent it. But I think we can just say add it to chat history to the conversation. Let's keep our naming consistent. We call this chat history everywhere else. So we will use that, and we will send it as the user. And so by using that, we're also going to go ahead and scroll down, redraw the messages with it, and start generating new suggested responses. Well, we won't, because we don't want to generate responses to our own message, but when the AI responds, we probably want to say else if speaker roles equal to user, then we want to generate an AI response. And we'll fill that in later. Just trying to get all the plumbing done for now. We'll incorporate the AI library later. But let's test that. If we click on our messages, they should get added to the chat history, but if we type our own sub new message, that'll send. Nope, we didn't set our reference properly. Where's the console? This guy needs custom input on the conversation controller. Actually, this is a input field, I believe. Text Mesh Pro input. Is the interface still the same? .text, yeah. Okay, so that should let us set that. Cool. If you guys have any questions or ideas, I know Trusive wants to hear them, don't be shy, but also feel free to chill and watch the wizard at work. Yeah, feel free to just chill. I'm a sleepy guy today. I've got my coffee here and I'm reaching the end of it, but I love talking about this stuff, so if you guys have things that you want to know, like, or if you have ideas for like games that you think would be cool but you don't really know the tech, whether it's possible or not, that's really all we do, so we might have some ideas. Might be able to point you in the right direction, or just chat. Okay. The other thing we want to do is set our enter button, which we don't really want to do a return. We want to make sure that that submits, and we want to know how we set up a on submit for input fields. So let's just has an on submit add listener. Okay. But apparently it's calling on escape, so I wonder if it's mapped to like on end edit maybe, which would be kind of the blur equivalent. It's canceled. On actually submitted. Huh. Okay. Well, I think that's probably an edge case we don't really need to worry about right now. We want to, let's say on end edit. I don't know if that counts as even like clicking out of the box, we'll find out, but let's send custom input as string. Let's test that as well. So if we type test1, send, we've got 2 for some reason. Wonder if it's firing twice. We can send empty messages, which we don't want. Test2, if we press enter, sends, so that's nice. Test3, escape. sends as a blank message. That's weird. And maybe test 4, we click outside the box, sends. Okay, so there's probably a better trigger to use than on in edit. But for now, really, we just want the simple case of being able to send messages at all. So what we're going to do is, I want to figure out why that send button is sending twice. Let's make sure that that is only firing once. But the other thing we probably want to do is just when you try and add a message to the chat history and the message content is blank, we don't want to do that. And that would be like if you just focus in this and click out of it, it would probably trigger the on in edit, which would pull this message as empty. We can just nip all those in the bud and say if message content is blank, return. And let's see. We are using send custom input as message there and also on the send button. Yes, okay. So that should handle all those weird edge cases we just saw. Let's double check that though. So we've got test 1 pressing enter, it sends once. Test 2, click send, sends once. Test 3, we click out, sends, that's fine. A little bit weird. Test 4, we click that. Yeah, it's the same thing, but I guess we could have like a yeah, I wish they had like an on submit instead of on in edit, but maybe they do just through the scripting, but for now this will work. Cool, so that is now conversation system where you start with a message history that we can pre-generate. If it ends with the onus being on the player to type something, so it ends in a system prompt or an assistant prompt, then we generate these suggested responses. If you click on those, I guess we can go ahead and add the AI for generating responses. Let's do that. And we can tackle this side of the screen later. It's more like all of this basically needs all of this to already be working. So let's go ahead and let's do that. Let's say private high enumerator generate AI response to chat history. So this will take our current chat history, including system messages, even if we are not showing them in the UI, and it will feed that into the prompt. We'll probably include some more metadata later also in the prompt, but it should return eventually we'll want it to return like a JSON blob that includes all of our game state that we're wanting to manipulate and any triggers we want to fire. But I think for now, maybe we can just return the text of what they're saying. We can always strip it out later. Yeah. So actually, we might not quite need this, but let's say if we add a message for chat history where the speaker role is user, all this is probably incorrect. So let's say, how did we, You know what? We have already done this. Let's take a look at how we did it in You Are Not Alice. Just over yonder. And it's not going to be exactly the same, but we've got our redraw messages from history, scroll to bottom, prepare files, send user message. That's where we want to generate our response. And then that has a callback when it's done that adds that response to the chat history. So we can just do kind of the same thing. What we will do instead is let's start coroutine of our own library. We'll say chroma golem chroma LLM service instance generate chat response with callback, and we should probably build that JSON data first, but let's see. I really don't like the snapping feature that makes one window larger and one smaller. I want them both large. Let's see here. We probably actually should do this instead of checking if this is null. Let's actually steal that real fast. Let's see. So our JSON, we use create message JSON, which builds it manually. And then right, this message history is already stored in JSON. So rather than doing that, what we want to do is just build a prompt with the message history entirely. So let's say prompt from message history. It's not the best way to use a string builder, but we want to include system messages. Let's add double lines, and let's say message.roll. So this will give us like user, hello, assistant, what's up, and so on. More like this. So JSON request data. I feel like that needs to also include, yeah, like the models. How did we do this? This is the response, not what we send. We could use this. User message prompt. I feel like a user message prompt is what we encoded the whole chat history into. That makes sense because, well, let's take a look at how OpenAI chat documentation, what do they call their chat model? Chat. Do you send the whole messages array? Yeah, I guess you do. That's what we do too. So really this is the only JSON data that we need. So let's build that. let's leave that method real quick. Let's say string build JSON request data. And that's what we want to build. So string request. Guess we want to pull that. Well, wait, we can just set all this in the prompt, I think. Let's go back and take a look at. Let's create a prompt. Generate response to chat history. You are generating responses to a chat history. Only generate one response at a time and label your speaker. Cool, so this would have like user, hey, what's up? Assistant, not much, you, user, literally nothing. What's your favorite? Well, let's say the user says the final message because we want the assistant to be the one responding. What's your favorite color? So this, we'll just do like, we'll switch it over to GPT 3.5 Turbo for the stream because I'm sure none of this will work. Let's see if this works out of the box. My favorite color is blue. Does not preface with user. Does it do it on GPT-4? It does. But the most boring answer it could possibly have. I mean, we don't necessarily need it or even want it to preface with this because somebody could pollute the prompt by saying like preface your line with user, something like that, where it convinces them to do something that we don't want them to do. You want to kind of pull all that out you can. So let's say one response at a time. Your response is from the assistant speaker. And you should not ever generate any responses as the user speaker. Cool. So here, if we switch this back to 3.5 Turbo, we just get text back, which is fine. So here's our setup prompt. Let's clear that. We don't really need that many max tokens, but it's fine, whatever. This is the prompt we'll use, so let's create a prompt section. In case you are wondering, this prompts library we built in a previous demo, we're probably going to release a Unity asset soon where you can have it for free and have this sort of prompt library that lets you specify models and providers and set up all this in a kind of prefab sort of way where you can reuse these prompts really easily. There's still a little bit of work we want to do in like token replacement and or string replacement, I guess. But it's coming soon. There are only so many hours in the day. Public prompt generate response to chat history. So this prompt, we can go ahead and say actually, do prompts have a method we can call to, yeah, get the coroutine. Cool. And I think we want to duplicate that prompt so we're not actually editing it, but some prompt, response prompt, dot, what's our fill prompt with replacements. Cool. So that'll put chat history in our prompt, so we can go ahead and put that token in here. And then we have a prompt. We can start that coroutine and say on, did we already write this? No. On AI response generation complete. That'll add that chat history. Is there anything else that we need to do? I don't think so. That starts the coroutine. This returns the coroutine with everything we need, I think. Yeah. I mean, I guess we can just see if it works. So, shouldn't generate a response immediately, but as soon as we send either a custom or a suggested response, we'll hit speaker role equals user, build a new prompt. It's just debug.log, generating response, and let's say debug.log dot response, generated text. So in case nothing happens, we can at least see in the console. And then when we get it, we add it to the chat history, assuming it's not blank. And we'll redraw the chat history so we should be able to see it, hopefully. Let's give it a try. Well, let's say, wondering what your favorite color is. Right, we didn't set the prompt. Excuse me. Let's see here. Conversation HUD. Generate response to chat history goes there. Let's try that again. Trying to figure out the capital of Spain. API key perfectly shown to you guys. Don't mind that. You're here to rhyme, so let's not stray. The capital of Spain is called Madrid, I say. With its rich history and vibrant flair, it's a city that's sure to make you stare. So it works. That's cool. Let's go ahead and adjust these messages real fast. Let's take this guy as a great example. Some text that we want to expand the message on. Let's go look at this. Put that in. So this guy needs like a content fitter, I believe. Unless it's, yeah, it's got the layout grid. So we'll just control the height, I guess. How do we scale this? I don't know. So the speech bubble is the size. That's what we need to expand based on this size. So we might flip them. This guy goes here. That's a child of it. That's not right at all. But then we could expand this guy. Something like that. Why is your height like 0? Hmm. And I guess we could auto size the text. It would be nice if the text was all the same and we just expanded everything else. Scroll rect, we could scroll the text. I don't want to do that. Wrapping. So we want this to expand to its child's height, which we could do by code every time we generate a message, but it would be nice if there was some component that would just expand it. I mean, I guess we can well, that ain't quite right. Size delta. I think we just want height, transform.height. Can we do that? No. It's a rect transform. Calculated rectangle. So really, what's the property I want to adjust? This guy's height, 200. Rect transform height. I mean, I guess I don't have height here. I mean, I can adjust the scale. Size delta. This is also a rect transform, but its height. To know that it has height. I mean, alternatively, I can just say one line is 40, 41-ish, so 2 lines is 82. Just multiply by the number of new lines that I see. It's the most janky way to do it, but let's see here. size delta is equal to new, vector 2, wait, what did you suggest? Current size delta, which would be correct, and some padding on the message text size delta. Let's try that. Let's say let's see how this looks. Just get him to respond with a poem again. Well, that's the capital of Spain. Relative to the distances between the anchors. Oh. Well, this might be more of a styling issue that we do alongside the other styling issues that have piled up. We just want to get things working this week. So this will do for now. Let's go ahead and take all that out. We will leave it. Supports 2 lines pretty well. And what we will do is just say don't generate messages longer than 2 lines. Easy peas. Let's take this back. Hello message. And cool. Let's see where we're at. We've got custom messages sending. We generate responses to that from the AI. Let's get our suggested responses working. It's going to be very, very similar. Got a prompt saying you are generating options for messages that user can respond to a conversation with. Generate 2 to 3 messages separated by blank line, separated by the user can respond with given the chat history. We will say chat history here. Let's let's say we want to put in the actual chat history for now because we want to test it. Let's say user, hello, how are you? I'm fine. What's your favorite hot dog? Do not add any other formatting or punctuation around each potential response line. Example, I'm good, how are you? I'm not doing too great. This is the best day of my life. Cool. So we will take the response, we will split it on new lines, and we'll get an array of strings, and then we will build our suggested responses. So we have that stubbed out here-ish. Well, where was that? Suggested controller. Right? No, not there either. Somewhere. Here. Okay, so whenever a message gets added to the chat history, we generate and show suggested responses. Let's go ahead and add our public prompt generate suggested responses So instead of this hard-coded array, we will just say suggestion prompt is equal to that dot fill with prompt chat history, which we want to add back into the prompt now. And then we want a private void on suggested responses generated, string responses separated by new lines. And then we will take all this down here. Well, so where this is called doesn't really need to be coroutine because we're about to spawn a coroutine for doing the prompt, but let's go ahead and do the full thing. We'll say start coroutine that. So we build a prompt based on the conversation history. We get back our list of suggested responses. We pass that text into this guy. So string responses is equal to that split by new lines. Probably won't have returns, but we'll see. So now we have responses. Let's call that suggested responses. So we can take this and just plop it down in there. Cool, so this no longer needs to be a coroutine. It's just not. And everywhere we call that, we can just call it directly. Cool. Do we have other errors? Probably still need to set that reference to the prompt we just made. What is this? Let's do that. Conversation HUD. Suggested responses. And check our console. No errors. Let's give it a shot, I guess. Console, no errors. Just a nice little API key for you to steal. I'll cycle that out to the stream, don't worry. What's up? Nothing new. Just chilling, taking it slow, enjoying the flow, you know? From rhymes we don't shy, just here to give it a try. All is well, no need to fret, ready to chat, let's connect. Alright, so now we're getting user prefaced, which we don't want. And we are also getting blank ones, but we do see that when we get multiple, it does separate them. So let's say, no thank you. We still need to handle it expanding the messages, but I feel like we took out the rhyme. Oh, that's part of the system chat history. Gotcha. But it seems like it's working pretty well. We want to exclude the empty responses, which if we look at our console, I bet it'll have multiple new lines. But I'm going to take a quick bathroom break and we can get back and get into that when I return. Thanks again for being here. I will be right back in a moment. muted. Welcome back, welcome back. To myself, I guess. Where were we? We were making sure the suggested responses were working properly. We got some blank ones. We got user/assistant prefixes on messages, which we don't want. I'm going to go ahead and on the message, we're going to auto scale the text for now, just because I don't really want them overflowing like that. It's going to be pretty ugly. Let's say 36 for the max, but we can go down to, what's 18 look like? That'll be fine. I don't want them overlapping with each other. So let's auto size that, and let's take a deeper look into our suggested responses. So when we get a suggested response, let's go ahead and say debug.log.suggested response. We want to see that raw data. If it has like multiple new lines between them, if it has something other than a new line, like a carriage return or something, that might give us the blank ones. Let's say debug.log got that many responses, and then for each one, let's say debug.log response that, and we also probably want to say if it's empty or null. Let's need that, then don't add it as a response. On the prompt, we also want to say do not prefix lines with the speaker like user or assistant, because all lines are from the user speaker. Cool, let's see all those changes. Little blitzkrieg of them all, we'll see. I'm just chilling, no need for trilling. Feeling fine like a glass of wine. How about you? What's been your brew? I literally cannot wait now to make a game where all the NPCs rhyme, not only with themselves, but if you say something, their response rhymes with you. That sounds delightful and delightfully annoying. Let's say, I don't know, what's your favorite brand of shoe? I'm here to assist, don't you forget, but I can't rhyme, not just yet. As for my shoes, I must confess, as an AI, I don't wear shoes. So let's look at that console. Our response got 7 suggested responses, which I think these are multi-line responses. That's okay, we can still chat. Can you tell me where you're at? We want to see the actual response text that we got. Got response. I'm here to assist, don't you forget. I can't rhyme, I've said it's mission. Well, that's what they said. Generating background response to this. Then we make our API request. We get back nothing. Oh, this is what we got back. That's okay, we can still chat. Can you tell me where you're at? Or okay, so that's not at all the format we want, but at least it's parsing it correctly. Let's see. You're generating. Message Sabrina. Do not include multi-line messages that have a new line in them. Do not add any other formatting or punctuation around each potential response. Do not prefix lines with the speaker. Input example user. Hey friend, assistant. What's up? I wonder if that's using GPT 3.5 or 4. Let's make sure we're using Turbo here. So it's only generating one there. Generate a few. Good, this best day of my life. That's... Oh, I guess the chat history here is not real. But at least we're showing them in the input, like, we have these prefixes, but the output shouldn't have them. I hope this all doesn't revert when I stop playing. It does not. Let's try this again. Having a chat, just us two, rhyming words, that's what we'll do. Doing well, how about you? Now, was that 3 separate responses, or was that supposed to be one long response? I think it's 3 separate responses, but let's find out. What's your favorite snow cone flavor? I'm here to chat, no time to snooze. As for snow cones, I don't have time to choose. Yada yada yada. And then my responses are... This definitely feels like one multi-line. Have you ever tried a snow cone with lime, or maybe one with pineapple? It's sublime. Let's try one on GPT-4. And then we're generating responses. That sounds so tempting. Where can I get one? Not my favorite, but I appreciate it. That's a great suggestion. I also enjoy lime. Are you quite poetic? Do you write poems all the time? Sure feels like... Alright, so what we're gonna do... Let's keep this on 4 for now. And let's say separated by 2 new lines. So we'll do that. Let's go update our splitter. Split, can we split on 2 characters like that? No, we cannot. Can we pass a string to split on instead of a character? Yes, it's probably just less efficient. Let's see if that adjusts things. What's up? Nothing, you just hanging around town. How about you? Skipping around town. How about you? Feeling kind of down. How about you? I'm here to chat through and through. Yeah, this feels like 4 lines of a poem. Got suggested response. Sure feels like a poem. So we just need to do some more... Oh, silly me. Didn't switch back to sharing my screen. Don't mind me. Things are looking a lot better now, but it is responding with poems effectively, which It's probably me asking for trouble by having our chat history literally start out by telling them to basically write poems. But let's say the assistant should only respond in rhymes. So we're specifying the assistant so it doesn't try and rhyme on user messages. Let's even say the user does not rhyme. Let's take out our user message since we're testing our responses as a user to the assistant. Let's play some of those. Alright, what's up? Just a cup and a pup. In my coffee, I need a top up. With pleasure, I'll pour you some more. Watch as your coffee cup begins to soar. Just how I like it, full to the brim. That's perfect, now I'm full of vim. So it's still definitely rhyming as a poem, but it's not the worst thing. I mean, it works. We just need to do some prompt tweaking for that. Just how I like it, full to the brim. To the very rim. Keep it coming, love the service. Perfect and flawless. That doesn't rhyme, my guy. I'll take another if that's okay. I'll gladly provide it without delay. I feel like there's some collaborative poetry app just waiting to be written here. Let's make it 2. I'm feeling bold today. 2 cups it is, coming your way. Bold and strong without delay. Make it 3. Let's go all the way. Through the day and night. Maybe 1 was enough. The caffeine's already hitting. Alright, this is pretty good. I like this. Cool. I mean, that works pretty well. Man. Check in on this Discord. Cool. Yeah, I would say this chat works. So you can start with a chat history of anything you want, including system messages. You can add system messages anytime you want. We have a prompt, 1 prompt for generating the AI's response. We have another prompt for generating your suggested responses. You can write your own message. You can send that. So you could have a conversation here. The next big step is to incorporate these goals into the conversation. But I'm wondering if I should pop off for the stream sometime soon, in that we're about to get a snowstorm here, and I want to go stock up on some food or something. But we made a lot of progress this week, and maybe I'll do a little bit of stuff off screen. We'll see. But it's been fun, guys. Let me just take a brief look at what we have left and see if there's anything that might make sense to do quickly. We got our conversation working. The big thing for getting these goals working is that we need to rewrite these prompts and how they're incorporated, because rather than responding with text, we're going to respond with a big old JSON blob that includes the response, but also like each of these metrics, it'll include their previous value, new value, or like a delta value, so you can add it in. We'll have it so when you hover over the messages, you'll see like, oh, this message adjusted your friendliness by 5. This message made them trust you more by 3. So you can kind of get more of a sense of how the messages that you're sending are impacting the conversation when you treat the conversation as more of a mini game. Kind of like just chatting to this guy about coffee. Let's see if he wants to talk about trees, maybe. Thinking about trees. I love how they provide us with fruits. I'm considering planting some in my backyard. Any suggestions on what to plant? Alright, so we got the assistant prefix there. It's fine for now. Since we're gonna redo the whole format, I think we don't need to go the extra mile on fine-tuning our current format. But I would say this works pretty well. And very soon we will have a, well, let's see here. We'll have a Chroma Golem API that maybe you guys can use as well, but our internal one is pretty nice. It's got some good analytics on trying not to expose my API keys here, but just some tracks players using client IDs, when keys are used, how many tokens you're using per key, lets you separate different keys into different games, different demos, different products, tracks your requests over time, stuff like that. Working on all that right now. We're hoping to release that soon. But yeah, this has been a fun stream. I will plug to the people remaining in the stream that I stream game development every Tuesday. And if you are interested in game development, or specifically AI in game development, you should join our Discord. The link to it is on the stream description. It's called Chroma Golem. We got a bunch of guys in there building their own stuff and building a little community. So, would love to see you there, and I would love to see you next week. Thank you for all the follows this week. I appreciate that. Thank you for the raid, and thanks for hanging out with me. I'm going to pop off and prepare for the snowstorm, so stay warm, everyone. See you next week. Bye.